Yeah, I kind of hate this, and there's all kinds of reasons that it happens, but I say all the time, my number one competitor is charlatans, because they've gotten into my clients, they've spent all their budget, and then the client is coming to me saying, like, I want you to do great things, but I don't have any money left, right? So, and again, I like to give the industry grace. A lot of those charlatans are kind of young folks that know digital marketing is a compelling and relatively easy, low barrier thing or agency to build, and they get into it and they just don't know what they're doing. Right, but
yeah, they'll broken a lot of white label stuff too.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Bill Rice is what happens when you mix a counterintelligence officer, a fintech pioneer, and a sales strategist who actually knows what he's doing. Trained to outthink spies, built one of the first internet-only banks, and now spends his time stopping companies from setting their lead gen budgets on fire. On the ADOTAT Show, we're talking about why new leads are a myth, why most sales teams are just stormtroopers with bad aim, and how AI is making everything simultaneously smarter and dumber. Let's get into it.
Troutman, the czar of the TCPA, isn't just the guy you call when your phone rings too much. He's the guy you must call. Need to navigate the legal minefield of robocalls, texts, and telemarketing nightmares? Troutman doesn't just give you advice. He hands you a roadmap, a compass, and a do not press this button sign. Practical? Yes. Actionable? Absolutely. And if you're not calling him first, let's be honest, you're probably making a mistake.
Welcome to the ADOTAT Show, where we tear apart the marketing buzzwords and serve up the real talk. I'm Pesach Latin, your host, occasional ad philosopher, and professional BS detector. Today we're talking to someone who basically lived three lives, Bill Rice. He started as an Air Force counterintelligence officer. Yes, he was literally trained to outsmart spies, then built one of the first internet-only banks before fintech was even a thing, and now spends his time teaching companies how to burn cash, how to stop burning cash, on bad lead gen strategies. If you're ready for a masterclass on how not to suck at sales and marketing, stick around. It's going to be a good one. Bill, how are you doing today? You feel like the general leading the strategic invasion of digital marketing, or more like the exhausted parent trying to explain to toddlers that no, you cannot eat dessert before dinner, and PPC is not the solution to all your problems?
You know, I feel like I'm probably constantly bouncing between those two worlds, but I'm really excited about all the things. I feel like we're in another one of those moments where a lot of things are changing and there's going to be a lot of opportunity to kind of figure things out. But yeah, still, in fact, I just got a call off of a call yesterday where I felt again I was back with the toddlers trying to introduce them to kind of just basic digital marketing concepts. So yeah, it's all good though. I like the as you can see, and you kind of introduced me this way, I'm endlessly curious, and so I like the diversity of kind of things that we do.
Yeah, so lead generation has entered a peculiar era. The promise of AI and machine learning means that marketers could, if they're smart, refine targeting to near perfection, yet many are still mirrored and outdated habits. So let's unpack this wild idea that there's no new leads that you said. Are you saying that every marketer out there is basically digging up fossils from the same ancient data set?
Yeah, this is kind of a fascinating sort of thread that I pulled on from actually a few years back. Interestingly enough, it came from a lead generator, a friend of mine. He was trying to sell leads into a really large organization, and they were like, hey, if you can sell me a lead that I don't already have in my database, then we'll buy it. And after several months, they essentially were only able to sell them handfuls of leads. And so it became very evident, and he talked about it, and now I talk about it all the time, that really a lead is essentially a data set that's already available, right? Most consumers have already applied somewhere, or there's just, through scraping and consumer data, the basics of what we think about as a lead, a kind of piece of contact information, is available on everyone. So really what we should shift our focus, I think, as marketers, is to uncovering intent and really less focus on just acquiring data all the time. So yeah, there are no new leads. Our consumers have already provided us all that information many times over.
So you talk about something called trigger leads, and this sounds revolutionary, but is it really just the marketing equivalent of that annoying friend who knows exactly when to text you about their MLM pitch because they saw you post a breakup meme?
Yeah, I think trigger leads as a concept is getting a little more attention now because there's some regulatory pressure against the classic trigger lead, which essentially, for those who have never heard this term before, is credit agencies got in the business of selling this show of intent, right? So a consumer has had their credit pulled, and then they sell that trigger, that indication that this consumer is now in the market. I like to broaden this term, and now that it's getting some attention, I think it's important to focus on it. This is actually what we're probably trying to do, and with PPC and SEO, we kind of do a little bit of a rudimentary version of this, where we're trying to uncover this intent. But there are lots of different types of trigger leads, right? And I know you're not a fan of this personally, but there's aged data out there. Some people broker this, maybe not the best sort of scenario, but there's the same sort of show of intent inside of your own CRM. Leads that you purchased in the past, marketing that you've done, you've got inbound leads. There's all of this data around you that show that the consumer has intent. And so I think we should be thinking more about gathering these triggers or these indications of intent in whatever forms they might be out there.
So how do you make sure that it's not, well, creepy?
Yeah, I think it's going to get creepier, quite honestly, because AI is out there. Now we're putting those AI engines on our phones. Apple just came out, with all of their Apple Intelligence, what's going to reside on your phone. And so natively, you're going to be sort of capturing your own show of intent. Whether or not consumers have control over that, I don't know. But marketers, we're kind of laying those traps every single day, right? When we do content, when we do SEO, we're trying to capture searches that show us intent. We do this with PPC and social media ad platforms, Meta, Facebook, Instagram, as well as Google Ads. Again, we're looking for and we're baiting traps to where consumers show that intent. And so one of my favorite ones, and this isn't to absolve these organizations from kind of what they may or may not do, but I love whenever a friend of mine says they're listening because they showed me exactly what I was thinking of. And what they probably don't realize, at least in my mind, I'm a little optimistic, is you've just shown so much propensity and intent towards that product already that it feels like they're listening when you're out there, on the internet and on your phone, honestly.
So you mentioned PPC, which has been pretty much how everyone has tried to generate leads in the past. It's like the quick and dirty solution for lead gen, but it does feel a little bit like marketers are duct taping a leaky boat. What's the argument for finally abandon the metaphorical Titanic?
Yeah, I'm kind of blended on this. We run PPC, and kind of the problem, I think, is that generally, and this is, as marketers, we're always dealing with a problem set. Most of our clients are dealing with a very short runway, right? So they can only spend so much money before they sort of run out, even the biggest of clients. And so they need this sort of quick turn. Well, what PPC does is it allows us to inject straight into that highest intent market and grab it back. As you say, there's all kinds of sort of risk associated with this, and I certainly don't advocate, and most of the people who push back on this because they've had a bad experience have tried to do it on their own. Even I, having been in this, in marketing for 20 plus years, I don't run PPC campaigns personally because there's so much complexity around it, and there's also much risk. There's click fraud. We're using special tools now to verify numbers and email addresses in real time. We're using click fraud tools to weed out literally bot farms and those sorts of things. So it's definitely fraud. The problem is it's sometimes hard as a first strategy and as a first growth strategy, especially if you're just focused on leads, to go with content first. But content is excellent because with content, unlike PPC, because we've tried it, in PPC, you can only go after the high intent. Customer already knows what they want, and they're going to click on it. With content, you can meet them in all the places they might be throughout the funnel, right? From research all the way down to high intent, and you can lay those sort of traps and those funnels at all those levels. So I'm definitely an advocate of content. There's so many different medium choices now. I love video, of course. So anyway,
They say content is king, but isn't it really a tired monarch? With all the AI churning these blogs and videos faster than we can blink, how do we make content that actually cuts through all this noise?
Yeah, I think I'm actually a little bit positive, a lot positive about AI. I think it's actually not going to kill creativity, but it's going to unlock and enhance creativity, because I think we'll be able to spend more time on the creative part of the solution. And the thing that I like to use AI for that I think has a huge advantage is that as I'm building out campaigns or I'm doing things, it broadens my viewpoint, because especially as an old soldier, been in this for 20 plus years, I have my tried and true my things that always work, and I tend to replicate those things. But when I go into AI and I go use that as an assistant, it broadens my view and it opens me up again to think about, well, maybe I should try this and that. So I think AI allows us to sort of broaden our field of view, potentially be more creative, and then, like you said, as it gets better, and it's still not there for sure, you can tell AI, particularly in video, but you can tell it in written form as well. But I think at some point it could help us combat the PPC sort of thing that you were talking about, because it will bring that cost of content production, once we have the creative idea, closer and closer to zero, right? Big time studios, big time films. Normally we used to have cinematic things that could only be released in theaters, and now streaming series are shot and done in almost as the quality, a cinematic way as, a big Dune blockbuster on the stream or on the big screen. So I love the fact that some of the bits and pieces of that creativity, we can execute a little bit faster and still bring the same level of quality.
All right, I want to talk a little bit about the relationship of sales to leads, which is where, for years I've said where glorious leads go to die. When it comes to sales team, are we dealing with highly trained snipers carefully picking their targets? Are most of them just stormtroopers wildly firing and missing everything in sight?
Yeah, you probably described kind of 80% of the sales operations that are out there. And I think I love salespeople. I love sales teams. I spend a lot of time with them. And so I'm going to give them a little bit of grace in the fact that I think sometimes we misalign, what we could be doing in sales by potentially structuring or functioning in a way that's not productive. So I always
think it feels a lot like what we call spray and pray.
Well, and that's an excellent point. Like for me, whenever I describe sales, I say it's an exercise in filtering and sorting. Right? And it seems really pedestrian, right? I want my salespeople to spend most of their time communicating. That could be building collateral. That could be actually having a conversation with a customer. But that filtering and sorting process, that's where I want to use systems and automation and that initial outreach and those sorts of things. That is what makes these leads perform better, because the easy thing, like just simply confirming to the consumer that I got your lead, I'm looking at it, and I'm going to contact you, can all be automated. But we don't so often, and so we leave that consumer in limbo for 20, 30 minutes, maybe days in some of our testing. So that's where I think we need to make some adjustments.
So you currently coach a lot of companies how to filter leads better instead of just making better leads. What is the biggest facepalm moment you've had when someone clearly didn't understand the difference between sorting and spamming?
Yeah, there's still probably the biggest trend that has reversed in my time of generating and delivering leads to sales teams is, and I spent some time at Quicken Loans, so I know exactly how this operation works, but that sub-second first call used to be everything, and now it's actually counterproductive in all of our testing and data that we get from our clients. And so the reason for that, at least we believe the reason for that, is consumers have changed. They're actually putting their information in front of you and giving it to you because they want the convenience of scheduling an appointment or dealing with that salesperson a little bit later. So that instant sales call is actually off-putting. And so switching to what you expect from all of your e-commerce folks is a text confirmation is really kind of the next, piece of that. And then integrating all that sorting and filtering, and there's some other technologies we could talk about there. But I think that right there is a dynamic shift that really has me face-palming a lot. They're like, in fact, I just had a client tell me the same thing. Oh, we call within minutes. Well, first of all, you probably don't, because your salespeople are doing a lot of other things other than making phone calls. And number two, if you're not doing what I'm telling you to do, which is automate that text confirmation and email, you're going to lose. That person's just simply going to go to another place that gives them more responsiveness and just knows that they're being taken care of. So
sales metrics are often about volume, but isn't it like measuring a rock band success on how many people showed up without considering if anyone actually bought a t-shirt?
Yeah, as far as KPIs around sales and stuff like that, I like to focus a lot of my attention on, of course, contact rate. So that's a good representative KPI of what I'm doing as a marketer, that I'm delivering you somebody that's going to be responsive when you do that text message or that email and eventually that call. But I think the other thing is, too often, especially in the verticals that I generate leads in, we don't track that, and we certainly don't report that information back to our marketing team, that usually being me as an agency, what exactly the statuses of those leads are and when they're becoming successful outcomes. So that, because we do know exactly where that successful outcome came from, so if we can get that reporting back, we can go after more of that, or we can shift the budget, or we can shift the campaigns. And so that's really critical, like you say, not necessarily going after the volume. And maybe one of those other facepalm moments is whenever I hear, well, I just need a lot of leads to keep my salespeople busy.
Right.
That's,
just busy work.
yes, that's a
crazy.
recipe for disaster.
So if you had to create a fantasy sale team using historical figures, who's your first draft pick? Alexander the Great, who could conquer anything, or P.T. Barnum, who could sell anything? And can we all agree that Caesars is probably getting fired for micromanaging?
Yeah, for sure. You know, I would probably go Barnum because I like creativity. I like storytelling. I think that's important, whether it's in content and in marketing or it's in the direct conversation. But just sort of hitting your head against the wall and running through walls, that's a typical sales persona, and I'm not sure it's effective.
And it just hit me. They both had elephants.
Yes, they did. They did.
If you could redesign the sales process from scratch, what's the one sacred cow you would slaughter?
You know, a lot of people will give me hate for this, but I would probably kill the phone call. I think consumers have post-COVID in particular, they've switched.
I hate it.
Yeah.
When I want a lead, I just want information. I don't want that phone call 10 seconds later, especially because I do a lot of my research at 11 p.m.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then when I get that automated phone call right afterwards, you know, the auto dialer, that, you know, it's 8:30 or 10:30, 11:30 at night, and my phone starts ringing.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And I'm 50, but so I would gather that Gen Z, the people who are 18 to 25, they hate even more than me.
Oh my gosh, my kids.
Because even my kids say that no one uses the voice. That's like stalking someone. If you call a person, you're basically stalking them.
Yeah, it's almost considered rude anymore, right? I mean, even when they're, you know, they come to the house or visit one of their friends or whatever, they text them and say, "Hey, I'm here," and then they approach the house or, you know, whatever. So it is funny. I'm totally with you. I think the phone call is dead, and I think as salespeople, we've been taught so long to seize and maintain control. I think we have to be more and more comfortable of releasing control back to the consumer and let them drive sort of the timetable of closing.
So are we truly on the brink of innovation? Are we just dressing up the same tired ideas in flashy AI packaging like it's the digital version of a Botox influencer pitching face cream?
Yeah, I mean, I do think we're in an age, like I said, at the you know, kind of the opening here is I definitely feel like this is one of those moments where things are changing. And just to kind of give an analogy, like when I first got in this business in 2000 and I was building that internet bank, one of the stories that I love to tell is when we built the first interface. Now, keep in mind, Google didn't exist. Facebook didn't exist, right? We were still getting, I just told the story yesterday to an entrepreneur. It's so funny. Most of our traffic actually came from newspaper ads that we would put in the business section that were rate tables. So we're getting our traffic from rate tables inside of the business section of paper newspapers. And in that moment, we had to very early on have instructions on the website on how to fill out the web form to give us the information we need to approve the HELOC. I feel like we're in one of those moments right now where potentially, and it could be a little bit creepy, we're going to be able to interact with consumers and get them sort of started on their process without collecting a lot of information, without having them do a lot of things other than click the button and say, you know, I'm interested.
Okay, so predictive analytics is also the rage, but are we actually predicting anything new? And does this mean my next... Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I love the idea, and I'm involved with some companies who are doing some predictive AI and analytics, and I think this is really interesting. There was a professor who was giving an MIT lecture, and I love his analogy. So many people think that doing predictive analytics or predictive AI is so hard, but the kind of the rudimentary example he gave is with a relatively small amount of data, we can predict with high probability the best leads or the things that are going to happen. And the example he used is, he said, I can take football players, you can give me weight and height, and I can tell you whether or not they're a tight end or a wide receiver, right? Just by, again, collecting that data set, looking at the patterns. So I think predictive AI in particular and predictive analytics has a really bright future. So many of our software does not include this layer. And I think at some point it will be a default part of the brain inside of your CRM and inside of your marketing automation. All that stuff will have some sort of predictive component or layer.
So do you think the people who are against the AI are just digital Luddites?
No, I mean, I think AI is scary in a lot of ways, you know, so, and if you use it, I think it can, you know, be even scarier. So, but I think it is important to use it. I think any sort of new technology, again, way back in the days of that early internet bank, I was introduced, one of our developers said, hey, look at this thing. It's just a box on a screen. It's called Google, and you can put a search in it and you can get better results than you can get from Yahoo directory. That was weird, right? But
I loved Yahoo directory. Yeah. They used to have editors that would edit each section.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like I would always try to hit them up and take them to lunch.
Yeah.
So I could get my stuff in there.
And you're exactly right. It's like some of these things are similar, right? We spent all of our time trying to get in those directories. Well, now we spend all of our time trying to get into the search result, right? So, and I think now we're going to spend all of our time trying to get into ChatGPT results, right? So it's there's some things that are the same, but you have to get involved. It will change.
So I want to dive a little bit into ethics in the industry, or the lack thereof, of some of the biggest players in the game. So let's be honest here. When you hear about marketers burning through budgets on silver bullet promises, does it make you want to laugh, cry, or start a vigilante group for justice in lead gen?
Yeah, I kind of hate this. And there's all kinds of reasons that it happens. But I say all the time, my number one competitor is charlatans, because
Right.
they've gotten into my clients, they've spent all their budget, and then the client is coming to me saying, like, I want you to do great things, but I don't have any money left, right? So, and again, I like to give the industry grace. A lot of those charlatans are kind of young folks that know digital marketing is a compelling and relatively easy, low barrier thing or agency to build, and they get into it and they just don't know what they're doing, right? But
Yeah, they're broking a lot of white label stuff too.
yeah, absolutely.
I
So
see that left and right now.
yeah, I mean, the fundamental thing, even if you're that person, right, there's plenty of business to say, hey, I'm young, I'm trying to figure some things out, and I'll give you a great deal on it. So fundamentally, just don't lie. Don't overpromise. Like, if you don't have the skill set, or you don't know, or you can't guarantee something, particularly leads, like if I can't give you a certain number of leads in a predictable fashion, then I shouldn't be saying that, right? And so, and like I said, there's plenty of opportunity for you to sort of grow up in this industry and learn along the way, but be honest as to where you are in that journey.
What's the most jaw-droppingly bad pitch you've heard from a competitor promising the marketing equivalent of a get-rich scheme?
Yeah, I think a lot of the, and again, we kind of hear these things third party, but there are a lot of folks, I don't want to be too specific, but there are a lot of folks in kind of the local SEO game that
Right.
I think overextend their promises as to what they can do and what they can affect. The other thing, and I love the platform quite honestly, but there are also a lot of sort of quick agencies that are building on the high level platform and promising all kinds of wonderful things, and they've just kind of whipped up a white label sort of system or SaaS product. So you got to be careful of those things. And again, usually they're easily detectable. They're like, hey, I can promise you hundreds of leads. They're going to be great. You're going to close millions of dollars. You ask them a few questions about how they're actually generating those leads and delivering them, and you know what their value proposition is. Usually it starts to fall apart and sound a little fishy.
So if you had to create a PSA to warn businesses about these charlatans, what would the PSA say? And would it feature dramatic reenactment with someone crying over a blown marketing budget?
Yeah, I probably would start there. And then what I would ask them is, and unfortunately, a lot of times the people that are kind of going there, they're running sales ops or they're CMO, and an amazing number of CMOs have kind of ascended to that level without actually kind of being in the weeds and in the dirt of how leads in particular get generated on the internet. So I would just start with asking them, where did the lead get generated? Show me the page. And if they are unwilling or not transparent or can't show you the actual page and the marketing copy and the creative in a live environment, that's probably the first fall apart that will keep you a little bit safe. And then from there, just keep asking questions. You can always detect a lie usually if you keep drilling down on questions and keep saying why, or how. Usually the lie starts to fall apart.
So looking forward, do you think that the rise of AI and better education will weed out the charlatans? Or are they just evolving to sell more sophisticated nonsense?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're always going to be a foundational element there, and they're going to prey on people that are ignorant, quite honestly. So I think it is, if you're a buyer, if you're a media buyer, or you're a buyer of leads, or a buyer of any sort of solution, you should do some research. ChatGPT is a great way to do that. One of the things that I always tell people to do is tell ChatGPT that you're so-and-so, you're an expert marketer, you're a lead generation, you're going to sell leads, or give it a role and then start asking it questions and it will reveal the secrets. Because ChatGPT and those large language models have a lot of information in them and they can reveal that to you. So that's a good way to quickly educate yourself before you go into a meeting with a potential partner.
And speaking of sophisticated nonsense, let's pivot to personal nonsense. Like you getting stuck on a desert island with 5 random people.
Yeah.
So you're stranded on a desert island, no internet, no AI, just you and 5 people in your wits. Who is your team, and what's your first order of business? Finding food or figuring out how to run a digital campaign with coconuts?
Yeah, it's interesting. So, I'll give you the non-fun answer, and my family's 5 people, including myself, and so that would be my first preference. But
a lot of people say family, then they realize that they don't really want to bring their family in.
Yeah, I could get that. We're probably a little bit of an anomaly, but let me give you the fun answer. So I kind of thought through this a little bit. So Elon Musk would be there.
Right.
And I think that's kind of interesting just because I think he would help me figure things out and get us there. There's a guy that I like out there, and there's a couple different people, but Mike Glover is an ex-Green Beret, so I'm ex-military. I'd always want to have a military person because we were always given like little to no resources. We had to figure things out, and crap usually always went down in a different way than we expected. So I kind of like to have that vibe going on there with me. Ryan Holiday, if you're not familiar with him, he's a kind of stoic philosophy. I think he would make great conversations. He's deep into history, so, and I am too. I'm a big reader, so I think he would be a great conversationalist. And then I'm only going to give you 4 because I run out of ideas, but the other one would be Peter McKinnon, which is just like this world-class videographer. And so I'm a big believer in documenting sort of the process, and so I would have him taking photos and videos of what kind of nonsense we were trying to get through and document the whole experience.
So who do you think is more valuable, a philosopher like Ryan Holiday to keep morale up, or a survivalist like Mike Glover to keep you from dying of dysentery?
Yeah, I am grateful for my early military experience because one of the things that I talk about all the time that I think is really valuable and why I would probably prize that more than anything, at least from my experience, is because in the military, in a unique way, particularly I was an officer, as an officer, you're given a team and you're given a mission and you're given a set amount of resources, and then you're told to accomplish whatever that goal is. So unlike kind of the business world, you don't get to interview and pick the best team. You have to take all those raw materials and you got to get the mission done. And so I think that's a really valuable skill to just be able to be resourceful enough to be able to achieve an objective with sort of whatever you're given. And so that's where I would put my priority.
And what's one piece of modern tech you'd smuggle onto the island, and you can't say satellite phone?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm deep in technology, but I like a lot of sort of offline analog stuff. I might actually just bring my Kindle because I think there would be long stretches of boredom, right? I want to be able to read, and who knows, there may be some pearls in there that get me off the island. So that's probably what I would do. Plus, it has a really long battery life, right? So it would last me for a second.
Lastly, who's in charge of keeping everyone sane? Walter Isaacson documenting the chaos, or Peter McKinnon turning it into a viral YouTube series?
Yeah. I don't know. I like both of those people. Walter actually is one of my favorite sort of biographers and that sort of thing. And one of the reasons I like him, and maybe it's a blend of the two, is because whenever you read one of his biographies, he's not just documenting the person and their life, but he's actually putting it alongside and explaining sort of, and he usually writes about innovators, like what's going on and how they're impacting the world around them. And if there are concepts that you don't understand, which you probably won't in some technology context, he'll explain it to you. So I love the fact that he doesn't just go give me a chronological history of someone's life. He gives me the context in which they impacted the world. So, and I think videographers like Peter McKinnon do the same thing, right? They're just documenting it in a different medium.
So when you finally get off the island, what's the first thing you're going to post on LinkedIn?
I'm going to post a video. I'm going to post a video of what we did and what it was like. I think people love that. People love reality TV. They love documentaries. So I think that'd be the fun first thing to do is like, hey, we got back and like, look at all the fun we had along the way.
So you started your career in, it doesn't say, but Army counterintelligence, right?
Actually, Air Force.
Oh, Air Force.
Yeah.
It didn't say the. I apologize.
Yeah. No, that's okay.
That was the two guesses.
Guys, so I respect them. They're good.
Does the background ever kick in when you're running a lead gen campaign? Like, this lead just isn't cold; it's a double agent working for my competitor.
Unquestionably, and I talk like that. The thread that led me from doing counterintelligence operations, and we did some of the and that was some of my expertise. We built some of the first information warfare operation centers and those sorts of things. So the common thread that brings me all the way to what I do today, lead generation is I have always been fascinated at looking at digital signatures, if you will, and patterns and linking that to human behavior and then figuring out how to sort of optimize or increase the behaviors that are important to me, right? So that's a common thread. So I absolutely use that background, and it advantages me that we were doing some of that counterintelligence work in the very, very early days of the internet. So I've kind of been on the internet for most of the time. In fact, some of our early stuff was done in coordination with DARPA, who kind of like built the original sort of foundational elements of the internet. So yeah, there's no question. I still think like that.
So you've also built digital banks and marketing strategies. Do you ever look back and think, I've basically spent my career turning chaos into order like a modern day alchemist, but with spreadsheets instead of potions?
Yeah, I mean that's what I love to do. Actually, I mean that's the fun of it, right? I like to build something new. I like platforms. I like systems, and so everything from the internet bank to kind of the campaigns I do, and even the agencies that I build. I very quickly try to systematize them, productize them, if they will, in the hopes that I can get predictable outcomes out of those things, right? So that's the way my brain thinks. I like to build things that create systems that create predictable outcomes, and that's what a lead is, ideally.
So you've also said that sales is an exercise in sorting and filtering. How much of that philosophy do you apply to your personal life? Do you Marie Kondo your calendar, or is your inbox a dumpster fire?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'm not terribly organized, and even in my work life, I've never been terribly organized. I'll bring people in that sort of organize me because I am driven by curiosity. So I will get curious, and my personal life is like that. So I'll pursue most anything that gets me curious, right? So this is the reason I do a lot of traveling, I do a lot of reading. So and those things reflect in my personal and kind of my business behavior as well.
So you've also worked with some of the smartest people in the industry and probably a few of the people who aren't. How do you spot the difference, and what is your strategy when you realize someone in the meeting is overconfident but underqualified?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's a delicate balance, right? Because if you're aggressive on people like that, oftentimes it's kind of like if you're a football player, the guy who does the second action or second hit, he's the one that always gets the flag, right? Even though he might not have started it. So I think in a meeting or in those sorts of sessions, I'm a big listener, and I like to sort of let those folks talk, and then I try to interject questions. So probably, and this probably doesn't sound very nice, but probably my general strategy is to keep asking them enough questions, just like I was talking about before, to let them kind of obviously hang themselves, or for the truth to kind of come out in that discussion.
Do you ever troll people that email you about their great lead generation strategies? I mean, because I do.
Yeah.
When people email me like they could get me the best leads, and it's just obviously they're spamming me.
Yeah.
I try to point out that they're proving they suck, that they really have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah, I probably, occasionally, when it gets to, like, my inbox is full of people telling me how many leads they can get me, and, LinkedIn connection strategies and stuff like that. So
LinkedIn automation. Right, I get that. How they're using LinkedIn automation to spam me.
Yeah, the quickest way to...
My business or whatever, which is weird because for some reason I'm listed as the media contact for China GoGo, which I'm not. And I have nothing to do with it. So I get all the spam for like CRM and point of sale systems.
Nice.
Yeah, somehow I got in some industry thing that I am their marketing person.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, that all of that and sorting through the inbox. But yeah, usually it's only if they catch me on a bad day, then I'll go, and occasionally I've even tried to, like, if I see a really good like potential salesperson, like occasionally I'll ping them back and say, like, do something else. You're good, but this isn't. So
let's get a little bit personal about superpowers, guilty pleasures, and family shenanigans. If your life were a Netflix series, what is the genre? Are we talking a spy thriller with a side of marketing, a workplace comedy about corporate chaos, or maybe a heartwarming drama about balancing ambition with family life?
Yeah, I would like it to be. I'm a big action movie fan.
Right.
I'd like to be action, or maybe like a really high-end drama, Star Wars or Dune, science fiction or something like that. But it's probably a dry documentary. So
you also love the power of flight. Is this because you're a pilot who's tired of the TSA? Or are we talking about a full-blown superhero vibes with cape and dramatic entrances?
Yeah. So I've always loved to fly. That's why I went in the Air Force, and I did it for a little bit of time, and private pilot. So I've got my license and I fly. So I've always loved flight. One thing, I guess there's two reasons that I would say I would love that superpower. One, just the flexibility in the in the superhero sort of mode to be able to go anywhere at the drop of a hat. Right. I think that's cool. But also when I do fly, and I don't do as much as I used to, but it is one of those things, really, when you're in the grind of being an entrepreneur or, even agency kind of work, when you're flying, you need to have 100% concentration on that, and it really is a mind-clearing experience, right? So sometimes as entrepreneurs, we need to have that headspace, and so flying was always a great way to get up there, focus completely on something else, enjoy the view, especially some of these smaller, slower planes that I have to fly now. You can get up there and just kind of enjoy the ride, and being able to avoid TSA would be really nice.
So what's the scariest thing that's happened while you were flying? Have you ever had to land it without an engine?
Yeah, I lost one engine in training, and it was a bird strike, which is fortunate. It just hit the engine, and we had two engines, so it was relatively light emergency, if you will. But yeah, that was. And I guess the other one, probably the scarier one, that one kind of ended a pretty non-event. But probably the scariest one I had, we were actually taking off at a small field. This is in T-37s. It was in trainers again, and we were taking off. My instructor was kind of doing something. He had his head down. We were just taking off, cleaning up, kind of the most dangerous moment, right? We're just cleaning up the gear and everything. And then I caught out of the corner of my eye this thing over me, and it was a small Cessna 172 coming directly over the runway, and I unloaded the aircraft, tried to get some speed and stay under him, and my instructor wasn't strapped in. He hit this canopy. He's all pissed off. He comes over, he grabs my air hose, and I was just, I couldn't even say anything. It was so close. I just did this, and he looked up, and you could literally see the tires of the gear, and he's like, "You're good." Just saved us and him probably, but I think sometimes we lack awareness. I don't think he realized that there was he was flying directly over a runway, but that was the closest call, a mid-air collision, which is not terribly common, but that was scary.
So if you weren't in marketing, what do you think you'd be doing?
Honestly, kind of my second love, and probably around the same level of kind of curiosity, is I'm an active investor in kind of stocks and equities and stuff like that, and I love
Bitcoin?
to say that again.
Any Bitcoin?
I do have some Bitcoin, actually, and I just had somebody ask me about that the other day. So I'm right now, it's on a nice rip, but
they're saying it could go to 200 soon.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's well, I mean, there's a couple of things that are really kind of triggering some moments, right? It's becoming large enough that it can't be ignored. Governments are starting to reserve in that sort of asset class. It's becoming an asset class. Retail investors, actually not retail, but institutional investors now have access to it. Anyway, so there's a lot of reasons. So just like digital marketing and that early experience with Google, if there's anything new out there, you can probably be assured that I'm going to play around with it and try to understand it enough to see if there is an opportunity. So, but yeah, I think I would be I think I'd probably be a hedge fund manager or something, because I would want to do it big. I want to do it with some decent risk, and yeah, I love just learning about businesses and coaching leaders and executives and stuff like that. So that's probably where I would land if I had an alternative path.
So if you had to sum up your philosophy in life in one sentence, what would it be? Bonus points if it sounds like something Ryan Holiday would write on a cocktail napkin.
Well, I'm going to definitely steal one of his, and that's Amor Fati, which basically is just love fate. And as we've kind of talked about here, my lives have kind of gone through some multitude of phases and different careers, and I've been able to do that because, and I've had some big failures, right? So whether failure or success, to just embrace what is in front of me, what resources I have available to me, the raw materials, and just move forward. I have a very short, kind of historical, I don't hold on to things, right? So I'm very much, what do I have now? Where do I want to go forward? And so just embracing fate and what life hands you and really making the best of that. I think I love living like that. Again, that's where my curiosity helps me out. But at the same time, I'm pretty optimistic. Even in the worst of times, I feel like I can kind of figure it out and make something good out of what I got left, picking up the pieces.
So before we go, when the credits roll on your Netflix series, what is the final scene? Is it a triumphal success, a quiet moment with family, or something more outrageous like launching the world's first lead generation campaign into space?
Yeah, you're going to find at the core, I'm a pretty bland documentary. So my rolling credits will be kissing my wife and hugging my kids. That's how I hope to go out.
That's a wrap on this episode of the ADOTAT Show. Huge thanks to Bill Rice for dropping some serious wisdom on why lead gen isn't about chasing mythical new leads, but actually understanding intent and maybe avoiding the marketing equivalent of lighting your budget on fire. And of course, big shout out to our sponsors. Troutman Amin, always having our back, keeping things legally airtight so the rest of us can focus on not screwing up. And incremental.com, proving that measurement actually matters and that media dollars don't have to vanish into the void. Stay bold, stay curious, and know more than you did yesterday. See you next time.